to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. Your host is Gabby Olzak. To participate in the 2026 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and nycbigbookaward.com. On this episode of the GAB Talks, we have the honor of chatting with J. Chester Johnson, author of the innovative poetry work Reading Whispers, Book of Triple Haiku. Subjects are love, implied politics, mini meditations on race, aging, and mortality. Chester's work on race, civil rights, and national healing has been vast and includes widely acclaimed non-fiction book Damaged Heritage, The Elaine Race Massacre, and A Story of Reconciliation, which was a winner of the 2025 Independent Press Award for Nonfiction. Is part memoir, part history, and part essay on racism, all tied together by the story of a friendship. It brings to light the horrors of the widely unknown 1919 Elaine Race Massacre in rural Arkansas. Chester's writings have been published domestically and abroad and translated into several languages. He's authored numerous volumes of nonfiction and poetry. His poetry includes Now and Then, selected longer poems, and St. Paul's Chapel and selected shorter poems. St. Paul's Chapel's signature poem remains the memento card for the thousands of weekly visitors to the chapel that survived the 9/11 terrorist attack at Ground Zero in New York City. Poems have been published in excess of 50 poetry journals and newspapers, including the New York Times, Literary Matters, Best American Poetry Blog, Poets House, Harvard College, Trinity Church Wall Street, Troubadour London, and the BBC. Born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Chester spent his youth along the Mississippi River Delta in southeast Arkansas and lived most of his life in New York City. In addition to his writing, Johnson owned and ran a financial advisory firm that concentrated on debt management. He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department during the Carter administration and was educated at Harvard College and the University of Arkansas. Chester joins us today from New York City, where he resides with his wife, Frida Stern Johnson. Chester, congratulations and welcome to the GAB Talks. It's really a pleasure.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure and honor to be here. I very much appreciate it, Gabby.
Well, we can hear from your intro, Chester, that you've had quite a past and quite a history. And we'd really like to start to get to know you better before we start discussing your books. Tell us a little bit more about your background, your upbringing, and how it has shaped your voice as a poet and a nonfiction writer.
It's difficult to consolidate all of that.
I'm sure.
That life. No, I've been a very fortunate person. I've had an amazingly abundant life, and I've had the experience of participating in some important work over my life, and it continues to. I'm currently involved in a number of projects that continue to reflect the life that I've lived. But to go to your question, I grew up in a small town on the cusp of the Mississippi River Delta.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very racist area, very racist community, a very racist, becoming less so though, and within a racist family. And so the texture of racism has been an important component of my life.
Yeah.
And I've worked in the area of racial healing for much of my life, beginning soon after I graduated from college. I taught in the all black public school in the Mississippi River Delta, all the way up to writing the Litany of Offense and Apology when the Episcopal Church formally apologized for its role in transatlantic slavery and related evils, up to my nonfiction book of Damaged Heritage,
And
The
damaged
Elaine Race
heritage, you
Massacre. I'm
you
sorry?
you damaged heritage, you discovered something, alarming about your family.
Yes, I did. As I was doing the research for the litany, when the Episcopal Church apologized for its role in slavery, um, I came across a document written by the iconic figure, historian, Black historian Ida B. Wells, and she talked about an event called the Arkansas Race Riot of 1919. Now, I had heard in family lore that my maternal grandfather had participated in a major race riot in southeast Arkansas, but I never had it to connect. And he had worked for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and um, which which became a major player in this event. But as I spent several years doing research on it, because it's not the sort of thing, it's not an event that the public knows much about or has not known much
No,
about.
for sure.
And you're right. I mean, maybe 1 out of 20 people have heard about it
Yeah.
and known about it on national public sort of discussion. So I continued to do my research, and I was ultimately able to coalesce what I had heard when I was growing up about my maternal grandfather participating in this race riot and this event called the Elaine Race Massacre, which arguably is the largest attack by whites against blacks in our country's history. Um, and a number of us have worked very diligently to um, get the knowledge for the country to discover more about this event. And it's gone out through Associated Press. And it's in the book I wrote also gave a narrative about what exactly happened, um, and there's been a very positive response to the book. And recently, the Library of Congress shop, which chooses very, very few books to have in their shop for sale, um, chose Damaged Heritage for that purpose, largely as a result, I'm certain, that the subtitle is The Elaine Race Massacre. Otherwise, I don't think, because it was so few people know much about it, but it is becoming well known. Southern Poverty Law Center a few months ago listed, when it was the 106th commemoration or anniversary of the Elaine Race Massacre, they got 2,000 respondents to it. And so we're doing a lot, and that book certainly has had its influence. But my point being is that, I would be negligent if I didn't mention that the second part of the subtitle, being a story of reconciliation, was extraordinarily important for me, because I became close with a descendant of victims in the massacre, um, and she and I, and actually our two families, her husband, my wife, our children, and became very close as we went through the process of racial healing using the Elaine massacre as a way, sort of as a fulcrum to bring us together. Um, and it was, I mean, to give you an idea of how close we two families became, that she, after a long illness with cancer, she passed away in 2021. And I was asked to give the eulogy at her memorial service. So that that became very important because many people, I've given over 100 presentations since that book came out in 2020 on racism and the various elements of racism and racial healing. And so much of it dealt with the relationship that I had with Sheila Walker, who incidentally wrote the introduction to Damaged Heritage. Um, so there is this thread that goes through, but I have written poetry since I was in high school. And one of my important elements of poetry is that I became the poet for the retranslation of the Psalms. They're part of the Book of Common Prayer of the Episcopal Church. Back when I was in the 1970s, which is, and I'm the sole surviving member of the drafting committee. But that's both, that's significant element of my poetry, plus the books that you recited in the introduction. I've had just enormous. I'm just very thankful of the life I've had, and plus the work I did in public finance, including the time that I was Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department. So it's been a wonderful ride, and it's not letting up. I mean, as I mentioned to you, the work it's not letting up. I mean, as I mentioned, the Episcopal Bishop of New York announced this work of coming up with drafting a gender neutral or inclusive morning and evening prayers offices, as well as a new version of the Psalms it's in the spirit of the Psalms that we're producing this year. So it's just
They're not letting you get any rest, Chester.
no.
You're
My
no,
wife complains about that
I'm
all the
sure she
time.
does. No such word as retirement in your life, is there?
No,
No. So
but
Chester,
I
holds
wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm sure
I-
you wouldn't. You've been writing poetry since you're a teenager in high school. Holds up reading whispers. I want to circle back to that and show folks what we're talking about. It's a book of triple haiku. It's a beautiful cover. Edward Mendelsohn of Columbia University said it presents a whole world of emotion in 9 brief lines. And your publisher said you've created a layered experience, something that honors the traditional form while making it wholly his own. Chester, educate us a little and explain to folks what distinguishes a triple haiku from a traditional haiku.
Okay, I talk in stories, so I hope you don't mind my
I love
telling
so
a brief story. So I became interested as I got older. I noticed that I was writing a little bit more in shorter forms,
okay.
like quatrains and haiku, which is uh, traditional haiku is a 3-line poem, 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second line, and 5 syllables in the third line. And we have uh, those of us who write in the English language, incorporated this approach over time from the traditional form, a very ancient form of Japanese poetry. And what we've done is really taken it onto ourselves and restructured it because of a variety of ways, but it's Japanese is a more language. It doesn't use syllables, so it measures sound rather than the use of syllables. So ours ends up being a little bit longer than the traditional haiku, but that's what we do with it. And I just noticed, W.H. Auden wrote a lot of haiku um, and Ezra Pound and Amy Lowell and others, and even though it wasn't haiku, I noticed that Walt Whitman, in his later years, um, wrote shorter poems. Um, and I got interested in it, especially as I was getting older. I wanted to know because I've always I wrote a poem a long time ago about how poetry is a function of not just the brain and heart, and it's also a function of energy. And anyway, I had written large number of haiku, these one stanza haikus, um, and then in 2019, I was in my wife and I were in England talking to a large number of institutions about my book. It's called Auden, the Psalms, and Me, which is the book of the retranslation of the Psalms for the Episcopal Church. And Auden, W.H. Auden, was a very famous poet, and he left the committee, and I replaced him in '71 and worked on those '79. Anyway, I wrote this book. Loved writing it. I had more fun writing that book, I think, than I've written any other book I've written. It was just great fun doing it. And I was in England, and but a reasonably, not reasonably well-known artist, his name is James DeWoody, needed a 9-line poem place in an artwork that, and while I was making all these presentations in England, I really didn't have time to write a 9-line poem. I didn't want it to come out wrong anyway. But I did. I brought my portfolio of poems I was working on, and so I had 3 haiku that I thought were very similar, and I sort of merged them in a very and he it sparked it, and especially since the response to it was very good, and everyone's since I've been doing that really liked it. Although this is a piece of the story, is I continued to write in this triple haiku for ever since 2019. I was working on it because I just like to shape it, and I would write a stanza of haiku, but I wouldn't write the second or third stanza because I wanted it to be a little bit mysterious from moving to one stanza to the next and whatever. Anyway, but then back in 2025, I sent a note to a friend and said, I have to think about my legacy, and does it make sense for me to continue to write in this triple haiku? Because I'm just not sure, and I respected this person. He's an editor, publisher, but But I wasn't looking for this thing to get published. I wanted to get a view of whether I should continue to write these triple haiku. And about a month later, I get an email back from him. And he said, "These are wonderful. They're terrific. You got to keep writing on them." And since I published, that is my friend, but I wasn't looking for publication. I wanted an opinion about, because he's been in this business since the 1990s, so he knows his business. He knows all this, and I respected his opinion. So he said, I want my poetry publishing house to bring these poems to the world, and would you let me publish them?" And his letter was just magnificent. And so I sort of made a deal with him. "Yes, but I want to use your letter and make some changes in the letter, and we'll call it editor's notes." And so in this book, you'll find a section on it called editor's notes, and it's it's derived from, we only made a few changes, from the letter he sent to me saying, "You can't stop doing what you're doing. You've got to," my publishing house, I want to use my publishing house to publish Reading Whispers. We didn't have a title at that point, but that's the story of how it got published.
Oh, well, that's great, which brings me to a couple of other questions. Um, did you read I know you said you wrote a few of the triple haikus, but did you then write each one individually and weave them together, or do they emerge as one unified piece from the start?
No, I think they're all unified.
Okay.
Um, but I had a technique that, because poets generally write a poem, at least the first draft, they'll write a poem and it'll be complete. It'll be whatever it is, iambic pentameter of four, four stanzas, or, free verse of 25 lines, or whatever they do. Um, but I decided that I didn't want to do that. I would write one haiku, and then I would I would put it aside, and I would think about it for a while, and then think about additional um, components that the poem should have in order to not only be attractive but be meaningful. Because the shortcoming for Westerners of haiku, of that one stanza of 5, 7, 5 syllables, is that it's only sort of sensory. It's a
Yeah.
moment. And we're not used to, we tend to want an event, a conclusion. Where does something go?
And a title, which you
And
did give us, which is not in a traditional haiku,
right,
right?
I'm sorry.
You gave us a title as well, which traditionally is not really present in traditional Japanese haikus, isn't that correct?
Right. Yes, definitely.
So each poem
Definitely.
has a title. I mean, the poems are emotionally charged and incredibly diverse in subjects matter. You talk about death, romance, pain. That's only the beginning. Did you find that writing in a compressed form like a haiku ever felt limiting? I mean, it seems like you sort of drag the emotion out. I think that's what you were getting to rather than have it be limited.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't, well, let me put it this way. I felt that a single haiku was very limiting
Yeah.
for our way of thinking.
Mhm.
But when I was able to put three of them together, that and they're being almost individually purposeful, that there was virtually a conclusion that one could reach about the poem um, in its entirety. But it didn't come by my sitting down and writing three stanzas at once.
Right.
I really wanted to have virtually a mystery of tying pieces of it together, but not that in its totality didn't make sense. I wanted it had to make sense,
Right.
but it was a way of taking either a different view or a different aspect of what the first stanza had done, and then lead into something later. I mean, there are numerous poems that show that, uh, to particularly um, the first two poems actually show that. Um,
Chester, is there a
and
particular poem, maybe those 2 in the collection that feels especially personal to you or that you'd like to share with
Sure.
us?
So here it is. The first one is, I think, as you know, this was the this was the poem that was shown on the Times Square jumbotron on
Valentine.
Valentine's Day,
Yes, yes.
and it was shown, 24 times each hour show. Um, but there was also another organization that also here in New York City that wanted to use it. It's a large organization of individuals, um, and sort of public service minded, and they wanted to send out on their bulletin same poem. So
Wow.
I didn't write this for Valentine's Day, but it's already begun to take on that aura.
Okay.
So it's very
So
fun.
share it with us,
It
Chester.
well, it's the poem of is called "You," a love poem. From many places to many voices I hear, I sought only one. I am who I am where you are, and I'll be who I'll be where you've been. You were there before we were, before there, before I knew you would be.
Beautiful. Really beautiful. So, Chester, when we look at this book, I want to ask, what do you hope readers, we talked about a sensory experience, what do you hope readers feel versus understand when reading this poem or other poems? And do you think the meaning of each poem is fixed, hence the title, or does it
I'm
change?
sorry, I can't hear you very
I'm
well.
sorry. What do you hope readers feel versus understand when reading these poems? You just said that this poem wasn't meant to be a Valentine's Day poem, but it's kind of taken a life of its own. Is the meaning of each poem fixed, hence the title, or do you feel like it changes with every reader?
I think it changes with every reader, especially that the last stanza of it is one that illustrates the ability to interpret that in a variety of different
Yeah.
ways. So, but my impression of it, people coming back to me with it, and so many people have commented about the poem and how important it is in terms of its outpouring of, or at least the people who read it and absorb it, how it reflects a love life for them. But my expectation is that when someone reads it the first time, it's much more intuitive, and as opposed to logical for anyone. It's intuitive, and it proves to be truthful on a number of layers and levels of the experience of being in love. And I see that as the way in which the poem attracts and draws people to it. But then, as editor's notes discuss, because it's a layered experience,
Right.
You get drawn back to it. And over time, it becomes an intellectual process as well. You may have been brought to it initially by your sort of intuitive reaction and knowing it was true, but you weren't intellectually saying, why is this true? You just felt the truth and the reality and the emotion of it without thinking intellectually about it. And it was only later that as you come back to the poem that you realize the three stanzas work in a way that's a bit of a journey, but a short journey.
A
A
short journey.
journey of that is from each person's experience is true, and they want to relive that, and they want to share it. So the people I've talked to have read it, and so I mean, I get calls about about that poem in particular.
I'm sure.
One night before last, somebody called, and I've known him for years. And he said, "I really want to talk about you, a love poem." So, why were you thinking about this? Blah 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 blah.
That must
And
be so meaningful to you, really. What about the remainder of the book? There are so many fabulous poems in it, so diverse. Are there any recurring emotional or philosophical threads that connect the poem in the collection?
well, I wouldn't say more than that. It's it's life experiences that but tie it together. For example, I'll go back to this call I had night before last, and you know, I'm I don't mind admitting it. I'm an old man, and this person it was too. And he said, one other of the poems that I really like it's called Foreshortened. It's the last poem, just coincidentally, is the last poem in the volume for reasons that are, can become obvious. But I'll read that one if it's okay. It's foreshortened. We did not know it would be this way, cutting life short before its time. With surprise, we say that we slowly disappear as the light goes down, as age surrounds us everywhere, and everyone looks through us as mist. I mean, so you hear people who, my age and older or young, even, a little younger than I am, complain that they become invisible. Or I've noticed it's like it's like walking through a haze or mist because you are effectively so often invisible to the world around you because of your age. And so, well, that's, I'm using that only as,
No, it's really
the sort
touching.
of
And
the bookends to the book,
yeah,
because I start out with a love and then I have foreshortened at the very end.
but it's all life experiences. The first one, it could be a young love, it could be an old love also, but the last one
Sure.
could be even talking about your teenage life ending and moving on to that next stage in your life. It could really be interpreted in so many ways. Um, the whole book, Chester, feels intimate because as you just said, it's life experiences, which explains the intimacy of it. What does the reading whispers, what does the whisper represent in your poetic voice?
Um, well, it's poetically to me, it means if you separate um, haiku individually, not even mentioning the three stanzas or whatever, it is a bit of a whisper. I mean,
Yeah.
the experience of of one of the stanzas, as people have said, you can take individual stanzas, Chester, of this book, and they are very good haiku.
Mhm. For
You
sure.
don't have to. They don't have to be joined.
But I think that's the way you
So
wrote
they're
it. That's the way you wrote it. You wrote 1 stanza and then came back to it, so that would make perfect sense.
right, and
Yeah.
so that was. Um, so I sort of equated. I wasn't trying to force the idea of a triple haiku in the title. Um, I was trying to give the sense of drawing someone to the use of haiku.
Mhm.
So, um, reading whispers is you're reading something that is sensory. Um, you hear a whisper, and that's sort of an image emblematic of what a haiku is. It's a, it's you barely hear it.
Mhm.
It's a very short. You barely hear it. Actually, what happened is that the end of the book, I, a lot of people really like this. At the end of the book, I have a discussion of the history of haiku
I read that, yeah.
and also how the Americans uh, have incorporated it. There's also a discussion of how I arranged my triple haiku and that sort of thing. And I had entitled that in a manuscript away from what I sent to the publisher. I never sent that to when I initially sent like 20 triple haiku to my friend Jeffrey. But so I had called that section, which is an explanation of what haiku and history, all that stuff. I'd called it Reading Whispers. And
Okay.
then as Jeffrey and I were talking about the title for the book, we decided, hey, that's not bad for the title.
For sure.
So why don't we just call that section afterward, not WARD, but WORD, afterward,
Or
uh, that discussion you have in the book. And we take the title you had for that and put it on the book's title. And that's what we did. That's
It's
how
a,
we came to
it's a
Reading
great,
Whispers. Yeah, Reading
really
Whispers.
love it. So, Chester, you've been, as you mentioned, writing poetry since you were in high school. You've also spoken about quite a few poets. Is there any one line of poetry, yours or another poet's, that particularly resonates with you, that's always in the back of your mind?
Wow. Um, it's so hard for me to do that. I know
Or
I can
perhaps
say this, that I know one that does come to me because I wrote it and it was part of a poem that I wrote um, for the dedication of the memorial of the Elaine Race Massacre. There had been no physical memorial until some of us came together and in a family that who lived in that area wanted a very, very wealthy family
you know,
wanted to do something, and they provided the funding for this. And
that
so I
was
wrote a poem and I read it, and I hope I get it right. Yeah, um, all history is a struggle between what we must end and what we must begin. And I think that's very reflective of the battles that I've had in racial healing. So that
that's
was pretty
yeah,
significant for
that is
me.
pretty significant. What advice would you offer, Chester, to aspiring poets, and what has been your biggest challenge in this journey?
Well, I guess what first of all I would say is unless you feel completely compelled to do it, don't do it.
Wow. Okay, why not?
Yeah, because it is it's a struggle. I mean, it's if you're going to try to do it, you can't just do it halfway. I mean, yeah, you can do it halfway, but and maybe if you get enjoyment, that's fine. But poetry changes you.
How so?
The poems that you write change you. And the poems that you read obviously have an amazing way of altering your perspective and altering the way in which you see the world. And so, it's a poetry is dangerous.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, it is both the writing of it and the reading of it.
Why is it
It's not
dangerous?
surprising, for example, that poems become reflective of historical events and people need poems after, like, when 9/11 happened, one of Auden's poems became sort of very seminal for people. And later on, my poem that was
St. Paul's Chapel.
has been used as the memento card at St. Paul's Chapel, which was the relief center for the recovery workers, that it it's been sent all over the world. I mean,
Bueno,
it's been public. I mean, it's been changed, and you can't control how it's going to be. I mean, people have changed the titles. They've done, it's been everywhere, and uh, so people want poetry to say something that reflects the way they see something and the way they feel about something. So it's really a significant responsibility. And if you're not ready for it, if you're just going to use it casually, perfectly fine to use it casually, but don't expect it not to bear into your soul and affect virtually every part of your life.
Wow,
And
that's
it
powerful.
so it does have that kind of
So
effect. It
buyer
certainly has that
buyer
effect.
beware.
And I had no background whatsoever. You know, there was nothing in my background that led me to poetry at all. I mean, except I had an aunt who loved poetry, and we used to talk about it. But
Mhm.
there was nothing. I didn't have a writer back. You know, there wasn't any writer in my family or anything like that. Although I
And
did discover that a very ancestor had been a poet, but later on, as I was looking in my family's history, but you know, it had its own way of working its way and impacted substantially the way in which my life would, the journey of my life. So be careful if you're going to be a poet. Be
okay.
careful because it can take over your life, and
It's as you said, it's
it's a
dangerous.
wonderful experience, but it's not an easy experience.
I'm sure your wife can attest to that.
But she's my best editor,
I'm
so
sure she is. I'm sure she is. So is there something right now in closing, Chester, that is currently sparking your next poem? Or are you working on anything creatively?
uh yes and no. I mean, the um right now I'm involved in like interviews, making presentations. I make a lot of presentations on this book now. Mainly in the New York area, but that's taking a lot of time. But I am so involved with writing the nonfiction articles that come out every other week.
Wow.
It's called For Racial Healing. There are 4,000 recipients
Wow.
of those articles, and so I feel
That's
a responsibility
sure.
about that for a variety of reasons. And so I would say that is somewhat creative. But then I'm, working on this gender neutral um, set of psalms and prayers. Um, but I'm thinking about what I'm, what that future looks like in terms of, because I think that I will continue to write more triple haiku
Mm,
because it's a way of it has an attraction to me personally because I think this way and I think in the way of writing triple haiku that have that has a consistency to it and it has a voice of J. Chester Johnson in it
yeah.
that that I that I feel very comfortable with. And also, I am getting older, and I don't feel the compulsion to write, you know, 100 stanzas about
Right.
X, Y, and Z. But I do have a compulsion to write about those experiences that are reflected in the two poems that I read. Getting older. How
Yes.
I deal with that is being missed, part of
Yes.
missed, and being overlooked, and all the rest, and
Invisible.
and also the love that I have for my wife,
That's wonderful.
and how it developed in in those terms. And there, and then there's another poem I would, but anyway, there are, it just feels right for me. And so I'm in the process of sort of percolating on that. And when I have a little time, I'm sure that I will get back in because I usually write in segments.
Yeah,
That's how I,
seems to be your
right
process.
now, I'm writing the Psalms and prayers and all that. I mean, working on all that. But when I finish that up, I can concentrate and write, for a year or more on or
At a more
triple
leisure
haiku. So
pace.
that's my goal. I mean, I know I'm going to go back to it.
Well, we hope
It's
so
just a
because this
matter of time.
it was a beautiful book, Reading Whispers. We really
And
hope you write one very similar, of more life experiences. And Chester, thank you for all the important work that you do. It's meaningful to so many. Um, Love you to share with folks where they can learn more about you, your work, purchase your books.
well, the easiest way would be just get on my writing website. It's www. You don't need that, but it's www. J, no dot or anything. It's just J, the letter J, ChesterJohnson.com.
Perfect.
Um, and that'll give you more information about me than you'd ever want to know.
Excellent. Well, I'm
It's
sure
actually, I say this, but it's a wonderful website. It
it is a
really
wonderful
is.
website. It is, and it's
It
chock
goes.
full of information about you, about your work, about the phenomenal books that you've written. Chester, thank you so much for joining us today on the Gab Talks. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. It's been. I hope it's been fun for you, and
It sure has.
it's been fun for me.
It sure has. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome.
This is your hostess, Gabby Olzak of the Gab Talks. Until next podcast, keep on reading.